ProQ3 by Fab Filter. It's my main used EQ out of all of the EQs that I own. And I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, you're mad. You've got this beautiful SSL board with beautiful SSL EQ. You've got all this outboard gear that you've convinced your family and your missus that you need to have this. You spend so much money on it, yet you still go out and you still choose to buy a $200 plugin or $179, whatever the conversion is from US dollars, right? And I'm going to try and justify in this video why I think this is such a great plugin. I'm going to show you a few of the key functions of Fab Filter and how I actually use it in my mixes. Alright, so if you own this plugin already, congrats, because it's great money spent. But if you're like me and you've had it for a while, I've only kind of just realized that there's all these other features that are jam-packed inside this thing that I had no idea about. And to confess, I'm still kind of learning how to use them all. Alright, so apart from this being visually a great design and an easy plugin to navigate in my opinion, the ProQ3 also incorporates up to 24 EQ bands. It's got the ability to EQ the mid, the side, the left, or right signals separately. You've got EQ matching, the amazing built-in spectrum analyzer, which I think is just such a great tool to have at your disposal. And honestly, there's heaps more. The ProQ3 is definitely something I think all mixing engineers should have in their plugin list. Now, although I'm surrounded by all this amazing outboard gear, outboard EQs that I've invested so much money into, I still find myself coming back to this $179 plugin. For anything that's surgical, anything that I kind of want to notch out those certain frequencies or problematic frequencies, I just find myself coming back to the Fab Filter Pro Q3. Some other EQ plugins, I think they can often look a little bit confusing and a little bit overwhelming. I don't know, maybe that's just me. ProQ3's user interface, I think, is just so well designed. I love that when you add a band, you instantly get this, let's call it a module. And I love that when you start adding all these bands, you're not getting overwhelmed by so much just stuff on screen. So when you click on the band, that module pops up below, and it also displays the controls that you need for that specific frequency that you're actually working on. And then you've also got this little mini module that pops up where you can pretty much quickly disable, you can enable that band, you can change the filter shape, and there's quite a few to choose from. Or how I like to mainly use this is to solo a particular band to pinpoint a certain frequency I'm trying to find. Now, what I think is super intuitive about this ProQ3 is when you click a certain button, it enables different shortcuts. So for instance, while I'm soloing this frequency, if I drag up on my mouse, I'll begin to increase the gain on that particular frequency. Or if I hold Command on Mac, I'll be able to change the Q of that band. Now, although this is such a great tool to have, I don't recommend soloing specific bands too much when you're trying to mix. Just be aware that the tool is there and not to overuse it. Now, another great feature that I love about this plugin is the Spectrum grab feature, which you can find over here. Now, I usually always have this on, and what this does is it shows me frequencies that these could be problematic frequencies in my mix, or frequencies that Fab Filter has deemed as ones that are starting to poke out. Won't you talk to me? I can barely sleep. Now, what Fab Filter's software will do is it'll highlight those frequencies by allocating these little yellow dots above those frequencies that you can just easily click and drag up or down, whatever you like to do. Okay, so when you're mixing away and you're like, hang on a second, where'd that guitar go? Where is it? I'm sure I played it. And then you search through your 100 track session, and finally it's 20 minutes later and Pro Tools has crashed 5 times. All you Pro Tools users, you know what I'm talking about. And you're kind of like, oh, yeah, here it is, it's right here. It's right there. Now, what I've found is there are certain instruments that are occupying the same space and they begin to mask other sounds out because, well, there's a build-up of similar frequencies in that area. Now, this is where this next function can be a huge help. All right, so if we head over and hover over the analyzer down here, we get a quick snapshot of all the other tracks that have an instance of ProQ3 inserted. And then we can see a spectrum analyzer for each of those instruments. Now, if we click on a particular instrument, it's going to populate in the larger view, and we can see it as a comparison over the current instrument we're actually working on. And now if we go a step further and click Show Collisions over here, Immediately, we can see our mini view populate with all the overlapping frequencies in red, as well as in the larger view with the particular instrument we're currently working on. Now, I think this is a huge advantage trying to find those problematic frequencies in your mix. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to fix your mix, but it's a good tool to have up your sleeve. Now, with most EQs, you either add or subtract particular frequencies. So you add 3 dB at 5K, and then you dip 4 dB at 350, etc. That's just an example. Now, where a dynamic EQ is different is when a certain frequency reaches a particular decibel or a certain gain, you can have that frequency dip. So it's going to dip rather than just pull out that frequency throughout the whole track, if that makes sense. All right, so for instance, if we jump over into Pro Tools, let's have a look at what I had on here. So I found that there was a build up of 7831 Hertz on this vocal. Now, if I was to remove that frequency from that whole vocal, it was going to get pretty dull, right? Instead, I've enabled the dynamic mode, which is when it starts to go red here. So that's in dynamic mode now. So if I enable this dynamic mode, what it's actually going to do is when that frequency starts to go over a certain threshold or a dB, the compressor is going to engage and it's going to pull that frequency down. All right, so let me show you how to enable this feature in ProQ3. So let's grab our little band and let's go to 70, I think it was around 7800 from memory, 7800. And now to enable this dynamic EQ, we're going to grab our mouse and pull back on this little section over here. And now what that's going to do is it's going to enable the dynamic EQ. So before, if we just delete this, a normal EQ would work like that. So it's adding that 7K, it's pulling it down, but it's pulling it down over the whole mix, right? So we want to do it as a dynamic EQ. And to do that, again, so put this to 0. All right, and then we're going to grab this and pull it down. And then we can change our Q, pull it down a little bit more. And you can see when it's engaging because it's dipping. Every time it's going on a certain threshold, it's going to start to dip that frequency. You can do really cool stuff like changing the shape of that Q2. So you can go, that's 48 decibels, you can go all the way to 96. Like, very, very intuitive what you can do with this ProQ3. And you can also, I normally leave it on auto, but you can also change your threshold here. So how quickly that compressor's engaging. I've also got it on some low end in his voice as well. So this is with it, and that's without it. I'll just solo the vocal so you can have a listen to it. Won't you talk to me? So with it, I can barely sleep. Open up, darling. So you can hear this a little bit of, it gets a little bit muddy, and it's also got those tops of the high S's are really starting to get pokey. And putting the ProQ3 on, it really just helps clean up that mix a lot more. Now, if you're wondering whose song this is that I've been working from, this is from a band called Maybe Tomorrow. Caleb's the singer. And they've released one of their singles, Talk to Me, which I just recently mixed and produced. Go check it out. I just want to say thanks to the guys for letting me use this for one of the examples. Now, there are so many other features in this plugin, but these are some of the main ways that I like to use this plugin in my productions. Now, if you haven't heard of Fab Filter Pro Q3 before, I'd highly suggest you just trying out the demo first. It's free. You can get, I think it's a 30-day trial. And if you're a mix engineer or a music producer, I can't recommend this plugin highly enough. Now, if you've got any questions about Fab Filter or any of the plugins that I've mentioned today, don't forget to let me know in the comments. You can also find me on Instagram if you wish to send me a DM over there. Alright, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the bell notifications so you're notified when I post new content. It actually would be so awesome if you did that. Really, it would. And alright, now it's time for the outro. Alright, so everybody, this is Chloe. Chloe, do you want to say hi to everybody? Chloe, do you want to tell people? Yeah. Do you want to talk to people and tell them what you want to say? What do you want to say? Okay, you can go. See you later. Chloe, get out of my studio. Get out.